Let's see. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great day. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give everyone a couple minutes to trickle in, just 2 or 3 minutes. We have a packed agenda, though, so we won't wait too long. In the meantime, we have a chat feature in the bottom right. Feel free to write in what credit union you're with, where you're calling in from today. And again, just 2 or 3 more minutes, and we're going to kick it off. For everyone joining, welcome. We're just giving it another minute or so as folks continue to trickle in. I'll give my little housekeeping spiel now. That way I don't take up too much time. Couple quick notes. Number one, this session is going to be recorded and sent out, so relax, grab a coffee, chill out. No need to take copious notes. There's also a questions tab you'll notice in the bottom right-hand, right next to that chat feature. Feel free to drop questions in throughout the duration of the session, and we'll make sure we get them answered either during, if it's pertinent, or afterwards. We've set aside a couple minutes for Q&A at the end. Just going to give it another minute or so as folks continue to file in, and we'll get started. All right. Looks like we've leveled out on attendance a little bit, so I'm just going to get us started now. Again, for the folks who just joined, quick little housekeeping. Feel free to drop questions in on the bottom right. There's a questions tab. We set aside some time at the end for questions, so would love to hear if there's anything you want to ask our esteemed panelists today. Also, the session is recorded, and you'll get a copy of that recording at the end. So I know our time today is limited. We're so fortunate to be joined by these 4 amazing speakers, and I know they have so much to share about their amazing work and their commitment to the credit union movement. So with that said, I'm just going to get us started here. I'm going to pass the mic to Jenny Jackson, Alliance Manager at CUNA Strategic Services, to kick us off. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As Matt mentioned, I'm Jenny from CUNA Strategic Services, CSS for short. And our goal at CSS is to find innovative solutions that are going to help credit unions grow, strive, and compete with the banks and other neobanks and all the things that are popping up competing with you guys today. When we identify an offering that can help, we will bring it to the industry and collaborate to get it out there so that you guys can have access to it as well. We've been pleased to partner with Kat Berman and C-Note since June of 2021. And C-Note is a women-led certified B corporation that leverages technology to build a more equal and inclusive economy for everybody through financial inclusion. So very much in line with the credit union mission, which is one of the things that we really liked about C-Note. C-Note works with impact-driven credit unions like yourselves to match them up with corporations who are like-minded and wish to positively impact communities with their financial resources. Through these relationships, C-Note opens up credit unions to a new source of deposits and spotlights credit unions' community impact. A lot of times you guys are making the impact and it's out there, but it's not well known. C-Note is great about bringing that to light and applauding you guys for what you are already doing. With us today, we have Kat Berman, CEO and co-founder of C-Note, and Steve Pagenstecker, who is the Chief Innovation Officer from Point West Credit Union in Portland, Oregon. They're going to talk about how their organizations have worked together to bring resources to Point West to support its mission. We also have some other members of the C-Note team on hand, like Matt Royals, who can help answer your questions and share how your credit unions can get involved. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to the illustrious Kat Berman to start the session.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, and my heartfelt thank you to CSS and America's Credit Union for being phenomenal partners from the get-go. We knew that who we align with matters, and was really hoping that a trade group like America's Credit Union would understand and appreciate and support all the positive impact we're trying to do by supporting credit unions. So thank you, Jenny, and to the entire team for being on this journey with us and supporting us in so many important ways. Let's get started. And I'm so delighted to be here today with all of you and with an incredible credit union, with Point West, to talk about our work with credit unions, and more importantly, why we feel so passionate about building technology and driving capital to mission-driven credit unions like Point West. A little bit about C-Note to get started if you're new to our community or new to what we're up to. I'll start with, we are a woman-led fintech platform. My background is actually traditional financial services, and I had the privilege and opportunity to have friends in the community finance space, in the credit union space, in the CDFI and minority deposit union space. And the aha moment for me many years ago was recognizing that the wealth gap in this country had turned into a wealth chasm. And yet here I was, a woman in finance, spending many hours, many days, creating financial products that served a finite few. And so it occurred to me that we already had the first responders of economic justice. We already had the frontline workers for financial inclusion in the credit union movement. And so how do we drive more support to each of you? And so I left my day job to start C-Note. We are a B Corp organization that really is excited to drive more visibility and capital to the credit union movement, to see more of what we all want to see in this country, and frankly in this world: more economic opportunity, more justice, more access, and of course, not only appreciating each other from a community impact perspective, but also addressing things as it relates to both financial inclusion and climate. So think of us as a fintech partner to build a more equal and inclusive economy through financial innovation. How we do that is we've created a bridge between what we like to call impact investors. And those are everybody from you and me, so individuals who sit on deposits and want to do something meaningful with them, or at least want our deposits to reflect our values, to large corporations. And you'll see here on the left, US corporations alone sit on over $4 trillion in cash. So if we could even take a percentage, a tiny slice of that 4 trillion, and move it into the credit union movement, imagine the good we could do. Imagine the communities we can serve. Imagine the responsible products we could develop, and the lives and the families touched by just moving deposits back into community through the credit union movement. And so doing that is not as easy as it sounds and not as easy as it looks. And so we've created a technology bridge to essentially make it incredibly easy for these impact investors to move their deposits safely and soundly into fantastic credit unions like we're about to hear about today. We are on a mission to do this, and I'm delighted to say we've started that off with a bang. To date, we've moved nearly $500 million into community. So back into community, back into incredible credit unions to get this work done. And again, the goal here is to generate sustainable impact. We know so many credit unions, to exactly what Jenny was just saying, so many credit unions are already doing this work day in and day out and not getting the credit for it. And so how do we make sure that wonderful credit unions get the attention and visibility they deserve, alongside new deposit opportunities that are sticky and that give them an opportunity to use those deposits to do more of that great community work. So that's what we're about at C-Note. And just to give you a sense of kind of when we think about our work, some of the highlights or some of the data points that we love to share. Number one is, when we work with credit unions, and we work with credit unions across the country, over 96% of our partners have told us that this is the first time they've received capital from an investor or depositor that was actually aligned with their community impact. So sometimes folks come to you for a rate, or they come for you because their friend knew about you, but who's coming to you because of the great work you're doing day in and day out? And so our ability to unlock this base of depositors, this impact investor base, which is a massive base, $1 trillion base, is really exciting. And we're finding we're often the first time it's being done when we work with different credit unions. Our work together with our impact community finance partners has generated over $3 billion in loans in 2023 fourth quarter alone. So as we think about the good we can do together, it is obviously large and it is exponential. And then, of course, we talked about nearly $500 million have moved through our platform. So we built this to scale because we want this to be a sustainable, long-term, exciting, and impactful place for credit unions to access a new base of deposits, a new base of membership. Okay, now on to the part that I'm most excited about. That's a little bit about our work at C-Note, but my favorite conversations, as the team knows, is to get to actually hear from our incredible credit union partners. It's why we show up to do this work. It's how we continue to evolve this work. And it's really working with incredible credit unions like Point West that we learn, that we grow, and that we get to mobilize deposits for good. So today, I'm delighted to bring Steve on here to share with me a little bit about his work. Steve is Chief Innovation Officer at Point West Credit Union out of Portland, Oregon, so out here on the West Coast. And it's good to know that Point West Credit Union actually came onto C-Note's platform as of January 2023. So they've got some good experience under their belt of working with C-Note, of trying to address some very specific pain points, and then of course the shared mission of supporting underserved communities in Oregon. So welcome, Steve. Let me just start with great to have you here.
Thanks, Kat. So really quick, I'll just give a brief of Point West. So we're about 115 million in assets on a good day, about 10,000 members. Our field of membership is 14 counties here in Portland, or the Oregon, though primarily in the 4-county area, Portland metropolitan area. We received our low-income designation from the NCOA back in 2013. Our CDFI certification from the Treasury in 2014. And we are ever so close to, we want to be the next and unfortunately only minority deposit institution in Oregon. So that's part of our strategic goal, and we're working towards that. And we're roughly 42% of our membership is BIPOC. So we're ever itching ever closer, but that is kind of the breadth and depth of what Point West is today.
Fabulous. And, one of the questions, I was on the great webinar a few weeks back, talking to Inclusive and to America's Credit Union around their why those trade associations do their work. So I'd love if you could share with us a little bit about Point West. What's your why? You could have been just a community credit union, not focused on the underserved, not focused on the Latinx community. Share a little bit about your why and the credit union's why.
Sure. Well, I think I'll start with Point West why, because that started before I got here. And when go back to the Great Recession in 2008, and at that point, Point West was really trying to be everything to everybody. They had done several mergers throughout the years. We merged with the NAACP Credit Union back in 1992, and with Hacienda Community Credit Union in 2004. But we also had been doing full-on first mortgages at 120%. We had a commercial lending program. We had 60 employees, and we were 108 million in assets. So the recession did us no favors between loan losses in the corporates. Our net worth went from 8.5% down to 4.5%. And we really looked at, do we close the doors and move on, or do we continue to do this, and why would we do so? And it was a real look in the mirror kind of situation to say, if we stopped existing tomorrow, would people suffer because of that? And the reality was, because of the makeup of our organization, because of the mergers we had done with the NAACP Credit Union and Hacienda, we were a fairly diverse organization serving underserved communities. And we thought we need to do a better job. And so we said, what if we stopped trying to, fight with everybody else and pretend like we were bigger than we were, and just become an organization really dedicated to serving communities that lacked traditional access to financial services, to be there to help support those who needed additional support. And that's about the time I came on. And I had, previously worked at another credit union, which was fantastic, but was looking for something that was really going to feed my desire, needs, passion to work with underserved communities. And so I came along right at a really fun time where we were trying to figure that all out. We were getting ready to do our CDFI certification. And I would say, I think we all hold ourselves to higher account than we probably should, but I'm very proud of the work we've done in the decade I've been at Point West to further that mission, to continue to refine and reflect on the things that we've done well and the things that we could do better, and keep showing up for our communities every day and try and make a better impact for our families and members, but also for the community as a whole.
Fabulous. And in that vein, can you give us an example? What's a story you can share of a borrower or someone that Point West has been able to impact because of that focus, because of that work?
Yeah, the easy one is our good friend Sarah. So Sarah was a member. She and her husband had been members since we were Hacienda Community Credit Union, before they merged with Point West. And she came in and was struggling. Her husband worked in construction. He had gotten injured on the job and was unable to work. And so all of a sudden she's trying to figure out, how do they make ends meet? And spoke to one of our loan officers, who's now our community director of community impact, which is pretty amazing, and said, I don't know what to do. And she was like, you make tamales. You go and sell tamales at your kids' school all the time. Why don't you try and do more of that? She's like, I don't have the resources or the funds. So we gave her a smaller loan. We did a $500 loan. And then that $500 loan turned into another one, which turned into a $1,000 loan and a $5,000 loan. And now Sarah's Tamales is a thriving business here in Portland. They work 4 different farmers markets. They have a food truck. They have visions for a brick and mortar, and wildly successful. And that was all due to, Point West listening, right? Not trying to get in the way, taking a chance on someone who I think a lot of traditional financial services would have said no to, and seeing the opportunity and continuing to encourage and support that work. And I know, we've told that story far too many times, but the reality is it's a really good one. And I'm very proud of the work that she's done. And I was glad that Point West got to be a part of that story.
That is fantastic. And one of the things that makes me think of, Steve, is one of the patterns I see time and time again with credit unions is what I call the lifeline. Is when people think about financial services, they often don't think about their time most in need, right? Whether it's a spouse loses a job, whether it's unforeseen medical expenses. But one of the reasons I love the movement so much is time and time again, credit unions like yours show up as the lifeline. And it's very under the radar, right? We don't get to hear those stories as much and so I love that story. And I'm sure you have 100 more behind that, where, if you ask your team members, they could share, oh yeah, just yesterday I was talking to this woman, right? And so and this is one of the reasons we at CNOTE love to tell the stories of credit unions, because you don't have to go far to understand or to hear kind of the latest on how you're going above and beyond to support folks and to provide that lifeline during a time when most folks don't, when you wouldn't think traditional finance cares. And it's a different way to think about a financial partner, indeed. So obviously things are going well at West Point. Clearly there's just so much you all are doing as it relates to, impact, as it relates to growth, as it relates to, really being an economic partner. But I'm curious, it's a trying time for a lot of folks in financial services, and specifically as we think about the credit union movement. What's challenging for Point West right now? What is on top of mind for you as it relates to challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably mirror a lot of what other credit unions and financial services in general are facing, right? Liquidity is tough. It's a high rate environment, which depresses loan volume. And when you're working with people who are, more have damaged or low credit or no credit, um, getting them access to loans that they can actually repay. We're not in the business of wanting to put people into loans they can't actually use, is challenging. It's a real challenge. And I think, for organizations of our size, the reality is that the landscape for bringing dollars in for liquidity purposes to lend out to others is becoming harder and harder. And as more money gets consolidated into large corporations and people with higher wealth, finding those people organically who want to do that work is hard, because a lot of families have a great need for capital, but not necessarily the assets to support others doing that as well. And so what happens is you end up in this inverse where you have a lot of lending need, but not a lot of capital to give back out to people. And so I think, and liquidity it's expensive. When Point West goes out to the market, for an all-in market rate, that has a serious impact on their cost of funds. And I wish there was a way to not have that translate into the cost of what it takes to do loans or provide services to people, but that's the reality. And so finding partners like C-Note to help us bring that cost down, to find organizations that support what we do and want to see more of that out in the community, it's a game changer in terms of that connection, because this is something we've been challenged with for years and have wanted to build a pipeline of kind of like-minded organizations that could bring larger dollars to the table. But there is absolutely no way we could have done it in the timeline that we have with C-Note. And I think that is a testament to what C-Note is putting together and the opportunity for credit unions doing work like Point West.
That's so great to hear. And I will tell you, when we started this journey, we didn't highlight visibility as part of what we do. We just did it because we thought, how do people not know about folks like Point West? How do people not? But they don't. But
No.
So many individuals and corporations and family offices and foundations and folks down the street don't know about what you're doing. And so I hear you. It absolutely has gotten noisier and more expensive to get the word out. And that's something that we're proud to partner with our credit unions on, is really help tell that story and get that message out. And so share with me a little bit about your journey with C-Note to date. So how did you find us? What was the purpose? Was it liquidity focused or otherwise? And how has that been going so far?
Yeah, I mean, it was inherently liquidity focused. Point West had utilized non-member deposits previously through, traditional channels. And again, very simple, but also incredibly expensive. And not tied to the mission, right? It was more about what's the greatest return. We're really looking at market rate. It's got to be this, or we're not interested. They didn't care what Point West did. And so I believe our board chair was connected through the grapevine to folks at C-Note and was like, hey, you guys should talk to these folks and see what if there's anything there. And the second I had the conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, like, where have you been? This is amazing. And the idea that we could find a partner that would work to connect us to organizations that cared about the kind of work that Point West was doing, and then say, well, what's your rate, right? And be able to offer our market rate to these investors because they saw the opportunity. And again, we don't expect people to give. We don't want them to give away the money, but we appreciate the fact that we're not necessarily having the larger impact on our cost of funds, that they understand that providing accessible access to low cost capital is something that's really important to communities, especially underserved communities of color. That is tremendous. And so it has been a wonderful relationship over the last year and a half to continue to refine what that looks like, to build a rapport with some of these investors, and to get better at telling our story. Because I think that's one of the things that you already touched on, Kat, which is, we like to think that we're good at it. We like to think that people know who we are. The reality is that's just not true, right? People are busy in their day-to-day lives. There's a lot of things coming at them from all different angles. And so to be able to do this work with a like-minded organization that's helped telling that story out there with these investors is huge. And again, what I love also is the challenge to make us better at doing that ourselves as well. And so that's something we're continuing to do and refine, which we appreciate.
Absolutely. And our hope at C-Note is, always can we leave things better than we found it, in the sense of, can we create direct relationships to those clients for you? Can we expand those relationships? Can we expand that deposit base? And so I appreciate hearing that, because that is our intention, right? Is make sure that we're really opening up that opportunity in a variety of ways. And so when you think about the deposits that you've received through C-Note's impact investment platform, how are they different? And is there anything that they have enabled that's helpful for our audience to know, whether it's innovation, a different set of products, a different way to think about, your capital sources? I'm just curious if there's anything different about that.
I wouldn't say it's terribly different. I would say that it has put a focus back on some of like how we manage our certificate portfolio, and being willing to take on opportunities. We had an investor who was very interested in placing long-term investment with Point West, but wanted the ability to have a shorter term on that investment. So they said, would you be willing to do a 3 to 6 month certificate? We were like, sure. So we asked what was the best fit, and we created the product and put it in place, and it's worked out great. So I think that's part of it is, if this works important, and you're willing to take that on, like being flexible with investors and meeting them where they are, I think makes a huge difference. And that money's been on deposit now for 15 months. I don't expect it to go anywhere anytime soon, but because we were able to accommodate the need, I think that put us at the top of the list, and to do so in relatively small fashion. And I think that's part of it also is, really know what you're looking for going into this, and make sure that you're building it appropriately to accommodate that. The last thing we ever want to do is, receive a funding notice and then not meet the deadlines and get back to folks. We want to make sure that we're coming off as, the professional, caring organization that we are, and that these investments matter, because it is great. It feels good to have those funds come in and be like, oh, they recognize that this is something that Point West can do, but we can demonstrate our thanks back to them by making sure that we're doing the right thing, and following through, and making it as simple as possible for not only for C-Note to manage those funds on behalf of those investors, but that the investors feel seen and heard as well by the credit union.
No, that's huge. And I definitely think, the impact investors that we work with on the other side absolutely feel that, and feel that kind of positive relationship. And I will say, we share that intention at C-Note as well. I think one thing I've learned through so many friends in the credit union movement is, how do you make it easy? Because I don't know a lot of credit unions that are exploding with resources and have way too many team members that are sitting on their hands, right? We're all doing a lot with a little. Exactly. And so as we continue to build out this platform, it's acknowledging that and making sure we're making it as easy as possible for each of our credit union partners, and their team members. And so it is going to be an evolution. And before I get to my last question, I'll just share with that. I think one of the reasons we value so deeply partners like Point West is because this really is a journey we're on together. As I shared, over 96% of credit unions we work with and depositories we work with never access this deposit base before we knocked on the door and say, hey, let's try this. And so what does that mean? I think that means we're all learning together. I think it means we're all learning. Like you said, will those deposits stay? We're finding they sure as heck do. Do these corporations actually care? We find they sure as heck do. Are there stories to tell, and stories that can permeate and share with those employee bases? Absolutely. Is there more that we can do together? Absolutely. And so I think what's exciting about our work with credit unions is not just a great, let's open up some deposits for you. It's let's go on this journey together and learn, how big can we go? How impactful can we go if we do this together? And how can we learn from each other? How can we share with you what we're hearing from investors and depositors so you can tailor, your efforts? And then how can we learn from you and your team so we can do a better job in serving you? So it is a journey, and we can only do it with great partners. That's for sure. That is for sure.
Well, and just to add to that, I think one of the things I would just share is, this really is a long-term commitment for Point West, right? Like, this is a long game. It's not a short game. I think we see this as an ongoing thing that we would love to support as long as we possibly can, because of the value it brings to not only the investors, but to our relationship with C-Note, and making sure that we are doing a good job. So I caution against, anyone who's like, oh, this is a short-term fix, because I feel like, liquidity is not an issue until it is. it usually doesn't give us a lot of warning. And so it's nice to be able to build these relationships long term, to create that opportunity to know organizations that care about your work, and make sure that you have the tools in place so that the next time this does come up, you have the opportunity to take advantage of it rather than feeling like you're starting from scratch again.
Love it. I'm going to, in 1 minute, pass it over to Matt Royals, who's going to give us a little bit more of a deeper dive of what this looks like. But I'm curious, as we kind of wrap up our discussion about your journey with us, anything that was surprising for you, Steve, that you didn't realize that you or the Point West team was like, oh, we didn't know that's what it was going to be like working with C-Note?
I mean, I have to, the whole situation has been kind of that, because I was shocked that something like this could exist. Because like I said, we've been kind of looking for this unicorn for a while, and that there was such a commitment to making sure that Point West could be successful. And I think that is something that is rare in this day and age. Sometimes, we like to think of each other as very supportive of each other, and that we all want to do the right thing. But I still feel like it's rare enough that when it actually find an organization that is genuine, that cares, that really feels like just sitting across the table from another person, rather than feeling like they're in it for themselves, or for whatever's best for their investors. It was very eye-opening and refreshing. And to work with people who were like-minded, who cared deeply about the work, and wanted what was best for our organization. And that sometimes means like pushing us and challenging us to do harder or different things. I think that's fantastic. So if there was anything to be surprised by, it's just how genuine C-Note was and how wonderful it's been to build this relationship over the last year and a half.
Thank you so much for that. I will tell you, we are, as you know, we are a B Corp social enterprise, and that makes this so much fun and so much easier. We don't have to justify our existence. This is all we do. We don't have 12 lines of business and like a nonprofit arm. Impact is actually all we do. So I so appreciate you sharing that. And I'm so, so glad that that's been your experience.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm heartfelt thank you to you and the team for being an incredible partner. I am going to pass it over to Matt Royals, who I think is going to take us into the next chapter here.
Cool.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kat and Steve. I wish that could have gone on for much longer. I love hearing those stories, and boy, that just makes me feel great to hear some of that feedback that you gave us, Steve. So thank you so much for that. My name is Matt Royals. I'm Director of Partner Sales here with C-Note, sitting here in beautiful but rather warm Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Go Phillies. And I know we have some, I can see that we have some credit unions on the webinar here today that are currently part of our network. And so for those of you, thank you so much for your partnership and for being on this journey with us. And I know that we have some credit unions that are not part of our network yet. So, if you're in that latter category, maybe you're wondering what this process looks like to join, what are the requirements? And so I'm going to take you just really briefly through that. And I will also share my contact information at the end. I'm a resource for credit unions that just want to learn about the program. If you're interested and you want to apply to join, I can guide you through that process too. So again, I'll share my contact information at the end. I don't have time to go through all the nuts and bolts right now, but I'll do a high level. And please do reach out to me if you have any questions or want to learn more. We can jump into the next slide, please. So just a little bit on eligibility for the Impact Cash program. The low-income designation is a requirement to join. Part of that has to do with the focus of this program, which as we've talked about is on really serving underserved communities. So that designation is required. As Steve mentioned, these are non-member deposits. So that's another reason for that requirement of that designation, since low-income designations have the ability to take on those non-member deposits, but you may want to verify that you're able to take on non-member deposits at your institution. Certainly, community impact is a focus and a requirement. We're really looking for high impact credit unions to join this program. Whatever that impact looks like on your end, we're bringing in corporate depositors and institutional depositors that have a whole range of impact interests, so from supporting economic opportunity to supporting small businesses, affordable housing, green or climate related lending is a really popular interest we're getting from clients these days. But having a focus on community impact is certainly something that we're looking for. And also a requirement is to have data available to show that at least 20% of your lending is going to underserved communities. And definitionally, what we mean by that is either lower moderate income or communities of color or majority minority communities. If you have that data on hand, that's great. If you don't know quite how to pull it, we can certainly work with you. And we've done that with quite a number of credit unions to help them get access to that data to be able to join the program. Move on to the next slide, please. So just a little bit about the application process. Pretty straightforward. There's no integration with your core or anything like that. So the process can go pretty quickly. We start off with generally an introduction call. So I'm eager to speak with any of you that want to, as I said, ask questions or hear a little bit more than I have time to share now about the program. But once we've gotten introduced and the credit union has told us that they are in fact interested, we will take them through a two-part diligence process. We do a financial diligence. These are insured deposits from the perspective of our clients, but at the same time, we are at C-Note here required to perform financial diligence on our credit union partners as they're joining. So we do that. Basically, a desk review of your call report is how I would describe it. And then we look at your impact and we ask some questions to learn more about the impact that you have in the community. That helps get you qualified for the program. And also it helps us learn as much as we can about your credit union's impact in the community so we can make those matches with our clients that I was talking about a little bit earlier. Once that's done and a credit union has been approved to join the program, we get into the deposit operations. We'll have a short meeting to learn a little bit about your operations, your core banking system, how you calculate interest, and just some of those things to make sure that we've onboard you smoothly to the program and that we support you the best that we can in bringing you deposits. After that, we will execute an addendum to your account opening agreement, which is a three-party agreement that is signed between C-Note and our custodian bank through this program, and then your credit union. So that's a three-party agreement that gets signed. Once that's set up, we ask you to open a business checking account. That gets opened up in the name of the custodian bank, and that'll be the landing place for the funds as we're ready to start opening accounts. So pretty straightforward process. Like I said, I don't want to get into too much detail right now, but that's a quick overview for everybody about how to join the process, the program. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Other thing I'll talk about just briefly is impact reporting. I mentioned that we can help you take a look at your data if you don't have it on hand, and we will periodically ask you for updates on your lending to underserved areas. Which is great for us. Kat shared some stats at the beginning about the impact of this program. And so having some of this data available is so powerful for us to communicate back with clients and to bring in new clients to join this program and to provide deposits. And so that's a little bit about impact reporting. And again, we can talk more about that later. I want to keep moving here. So next slide, please. And I will step aside so we can leave time for questions. I think we may have some questions coming in, and I know our time is short. But as I said, you have my contact information here. There is a link to our website, mycnote.com/credit unions. You can read a little more about the program there. There's also a form you can fill out to request a call on that page, or you can please, again, feel free to contact me directly. You have my email and phone number there, and I think I can figure out how to put a link to my calendar in the chat. So if you want to just go ahead and book time with me to talk, I would be so thrilled to meet as many of the credit unions that are here with us today as I can. So thank you so much for that time, and I look forward to meeting some of you. And I think at this point, having gone through that, I will hand it back to my colleague, Matt Stratford, who I think is going to let us know if we've got any questions here that either I or perhaps Kat or maybe Steve can answer if any questions are coming in.
Perfect. I'm inviting everyone back onto the stage, so it's a full party again. So that was great to listen to. We have just a reminder, there's still time. We have about 5 minutes here. So any questions, anything you want to hear our esteemed panelists talk about, now is the time to drop in your questions. One place I would love to start is, I know we covered a lot of ground in whatever it was, 40 minutes. For everyone who sat here and listened, Kat, Steve, I would love to hear if you could just share like 1 to 2 quick action items for the folks in attendance. What is something that people who are here, who listen, could take with them and put to work?
It's a good question. I think the big thing for me is always think differently. Be curious. I think we, especially in financial services and credit unions in particular, feel like we've figured a lot of this stuff out. But the reality is if you get outside of our little comfort zone, sometimes you'll be surprised at how little we figured out and how there's many people out there doing amazing work and pushing the boundaries. And I think the other thing I would be is, as cooperatives, try and be a little more cooperative. I think we miss an opportunity when we don't reach out to another organization, another credit union, to ask what they're doing and how we can help without having to think about it from like a consolidation perspective. I think there's this great opportunity for us to work together in really meaningful ways to support communities that we share together. And when you look at the division of assets in this country, fighting amongst ourselves is like fighting over a thimble full of peanuts. We really should do a much better job of working together to help everybody understand the power and impact that credit unions can have for our community. So those are my things.
I would +1 to everything Steve said. And I'd maybe just add, just explore your options. I think a lot of the credit unions that we that we work with or that we learn about do have liquidity needs right now. And as Steve was sharing, the lending needs are outweighing the deposits available. And so, I'd say first call to action is just explore what's available. I mean, C-Notes platform may be perfect for you and it may not. And so that's okay either way, but just learning about it, I think, is helpful. I will tell you, being on this journey for years now, we work with quite a few credit unions that we didn't work with in the first 6 months, that it was like, not now, or let me wait and see, or I got to convince my CFO. And then, a year later, they're now some of our best partners. And so I'm a big believer in just explore your options. You deserve it. You deserve every toolkit that's out there. And so see this as just another tool in your toolkit. And if it could be a great option for you right now, if you have high liquidity needs, or it could be just an option for you in the future. And I'd also just lastly say, when I think about our work together as an option, I think it's both an option for a new base of deposits, but I think it's also an option to really double down on your work. And so whether you're working in a primarily urban community where that you're doing great work, but you're not getting to showcase it. Maybe it's in a rural community where it's hard to tell that story. This is an opportunity to really highlight your great work in a really easy way. And we see that not only as a effort to bring in new deposits, how do you attract a new base of deposits and members by highlighting that at work, but we're also seeing the net benefits to your employees. And we know across our movement, it can be hard to attract and retain, right? Best of breed talent. And so using those impact stories and that impact lens to tell the story and to tell the differentiation of your credit union goes beyond just external. It's also internal. It's also an ability to really galvanize and supercharge your team. So those are just some of the things I'd share as areas to explore.
Steve, looks like we have just a minute left, but we had one question come in for you about building trust. I know you spoke about all this work you're doing with underserved, under-resourced communities. The question was if you had any high-level tips you'd be willing to share for what that process looks like, what it looks like building trust, and how you do it so effectively with the communities that you serve.
The secret is just sticking with it. A lot of these partnerships and relationships take time. Trust is built slowly, bit by bit, not overnight. And you know, a lot of times when people look at Point West, they say, "How do you make it look so easy?" It's because it's taken a long time, you know. So find organizations that you care deeply about, that you share missions with, and find meaningful ways to build that relationship over time to demonstrate that trust. Especially, you know, I'm a white guy working with communities of color, and there's a lot of harm that's been done over the years. So it takes time to build that trust, to demonstrate that we are well-meaning and well-intentioned, and that, you know, it's not just words, that our actions support that effort as well. And I think, you know, those it'll take time. It's frustrating sometimes, but it also pays immense dividends down the road.
Appreciate that. So it looks like we're at time. So I'm just going to wrap us up here. Just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you. Number one, Matt, Kat, Steve, thank you all so much for joining. Steve, it was so amazing to hear about your incredible and impactful work. And it's just such a privilege for me to even just get to sit here and listen to it. So appreciate you. And then for everyone who was able to take 45 minutes out of their day to join us, we so appreciate you coming and listening to more about what's going on. So thank you so much. You have Matt Royals' contact information. We're going to send out a recording so you can review this back on your own time or share with anyone on your team or anyone else you think might benefit from listening to the webinar. So we hope to hear from you. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your day. Awesome.